Allow me to introduce you to our wonderful Brains Trust panel to talk about mental health with you today. Starting off with Jack. Jack Nigro, Central Coast-based music producer and studio owner. Shout out to Sonora. Jack's worked with some of Australia's biggest acts, including the Terrys, the DMAs, Pacific Avenue and Skeggs, to name a few, and countless local artists as well. He's had over 12 years in the industry, and his passion for self-development has shaped both his career and his latest project called the Make Your Own Noise podcast, which is there to empower creatives to find their voice and thrive in their craft. Please welcome Jack Nigro. Next up, we've got Erin Carmody. Erin is a psychologist, researcher, music therapist, and songwriter with over 15 years of experience in her fields. She's co-authored The Essentials of Mental Disorder. She also regularly publishes on creativity and mental health and is a trusted expert in legal cases. When she's not working, you'll find Erin songwriting or soaking up inspiration on her favourite Central Coast beaches. Coasty through and through right there. Recently, she's been collaborating with The Grove on Innerverse, which is a guided music therapy experience helping creatives transform their inner critic and release those difficult emotions that I'm sure a lot of us can relate to, which we'll be touching on very shortly. Please welcome Erin. Next up, we have Will Small. Will is an award-winning poet, storyteller, and social impact creator. Will is the founding director of Lead by Story, which is a 3-time national finalist at the Australian Poetry Slam. And he's also the author of Poems for When the World is Ending. Hopefully that's something we won't be needing anytime soon. Please welcome Will, ladies and gentlemen. And last but certainly not least, we have John Reichart. John is a music producer, songwriter, and session musician who has worked in the music industry for over 20 years. He's worked in many genres of music, including hip-hop, rock, pop, metal, and dance, so pretty much the whole spectrum. Some of his high-profile collaborations have included ARIA award-winning artists such as Bliss and Esso, Casey Chambers, Hilltop Hoods, Illy, Hayley Mary from the Jezebels, and Grammy-winning writer-producer Sarah Aarons. Please welcome John. Now we're going to start off the discussion with something I touched on just a second ago, something that Erin's a bit of an expert on, and something that I'm sure a lot of us, even the most sunshiny, optimistic, constantly happy people, can relate to having difficult to deal with sometimes inner critic, which can lead to perfectionism and disappointment. Artist burnout as well is something that you can struggle with if you have a particularly annoying inner critic. Erin, the inner critic is something that is, something that we all deal with, I'm sure.
Absolutely, yeah. I find it's like such a common phenomenon. And so when I'm doing my work, actually recently I've been noticing more and more, particularly with creatives, when people come in to see me with whatever the concern is that they might be facing, whether it's burnout or anxiety or low confidence, there's this inner critic often sort of subtly just lurking in the background, causing a bit of a mess, causing a bit of havoc in their kind of internal worlds. And so, I just wanted to kind of talk tonight a little bit about the inner critic and just how it impacts our mental health in general. But before I kick off, I just wanted to sort of make sure we're all on the same page. So hands up if you've heard of the term the inner critic, or you've experienced it, you've got some sense of it. Amazing. Would anybody out there feel like maybe giving me a little bit of an idea of how they might describe the inner critic, or if they have a definition for it? Anybody out there with any thoughts about what it is, how you could describe it? Yeah, in the back over here.
Mine's more, you can't do this.
Yes.
This is too hard for you. You don't know how to do it.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, it keeps you kind of small and doubting yourself. Yeah, wonderful. Anybody else got any thoughts, or just ways of describing the inner critic.
Yeah, I'm just like I'd like pick apart, like after a gig, I'll just pick apart all the bad things that went wrong.
Yes.
And then I'll focus on that, and it sort of takes away from all the good stuff that everyone else saw, but I perhaps missed because I was focusing too much on the bad
100%. I know that one so well. Like, I'll probably do that after this session today. Like, oh, I could have done that better. Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, guys. So I suppose like the best way I can describe it is that it's that part of your mind, that part of your personality that likes to create judgments about your emotions, about your actions, about your results in life, even about like your appearance sometimes. And often those judgments are very negative or very critical, as the name would suggest. I think the other thing to kind of bear in mind about the inner critic is that it's not that it is just sort of like a one-off, negative thought you've had today and then you kind of forget about it. It's a very sort of persistent pattern. It keeps showing up time and time again. And it's often based on these sort of not enough kind of beliefs. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not talented enough, and so on and so on. So I think like what can be really helpful in kind of managing and dealing with the inner critic is first just getting really in touch with like what it looks like when it actually shows up. How does it present for you in your life? What are the thoughts? What are the emotions? What are the behaviors that perhaps attached to this critical inner voice that many of us struggle with? And so I've found in my work that actually it shows up in very predictable ways. It's not actually that creative, the old inner critic. And it's so predictable, in fact, that I've noticed that there's basically 4 or 5 main, let's call them characters or versions of the inner critic that actually show up. So the first one is the perfectionist, and I know we were speaking a little bit about that earlier, so I won't go into too much detail about it.
Feel free.
Yeah.
You're the pro.
Feel free. I love that term, just feel free. So the perfectionist is exactly like you were mentioning earlier. It's that it's that part of us that shows up and it likes to magnify all of the little tiny things that have gone wrong and just blow them completely out of proportion. And its kind of dominant way of speaking to us, or dominant kind of narrative, is that's not good enough. So there's this like impossible standard that you can't reach, sort of no matter how hard you're trying. There's also the procrastinator, who's a very sneaky bugger. He likes to get in there and basically he's a little bit different, or she's a little bit different. Sorry, I don't want to be discriminative there. But that procrastinator shows up saying less, that's not good enough, and saying more, why bother trying? You're just going to fail anyway. It's not worth the effort. And so it kind of sneakily gets in there and it stops you from actually taking action on like what's most important to you and striving for those things that are meaningful to you. So there's a couple of other ones just quickly that I see quite often popping up. There's the slave driver, who I'm very familiar with. The slave driver likes to show up and basically it's your classic grind, feet to the pavement, rest is for the weak, sleep when you're dead, your classic hard ass, okay? Like it's just there to always make you feel guilty for not doing more. And how much more? You don't know, but it's always more. There's always more you could be doing. And the last one that I just wanted to sort of touch on, just to, again, give you a bit of a sense of how we can characterize this inner critic, is the self-sabotager. I love this one. The self-sabotager is very, very, very messy. So it likes to, it's kind of like your classic bad decision bear. So it'll show up and it'll get you to act really impulsively. Like, send the text that you shouldn't be sending. Get drunk the night before that really important thing is happening. Drunk dial that person. Get into that argument, okay? It likes to just kind of get in there and cause a bit of havoc in your life. And this one's very sneaky because it's often not really perceptible that it's even at play until you sit back and you actually reflect on your actions, on your reactions, on your emotions in certain situations. But its whole agenda is a bit different to the others, because what it is doing is it's saying that success is actually scary. It's actually trying to prevent you from finding that success in life, because if you get it, that could be too overwhelming, that could be too much, it could be too big. And so it sabotages you before you get there. So these are just some kind of flavors of how I've seen it show up for different people. And like I said, it can be like quite prominent with creative people, especially when we're kind of putting out work that's important to us, it's meaningful to us. It's something that we connect very strongly with in terms of our identity. And so this critical voice can get very, very loud around creative work. So I just wanted to kind of map that out. I don't want to dominate too much of the time, so maybe if we have some time later on, we could even just talk a bit about what can we actually do about the inner critic? Is there a way to work with it? Can we transform that voice?
One thing I'd love to know is, if I can open it up to the panel for a sec, what sort of inner critic have you guys come across the most in your lives?
Mine's the slave driver. Yeah, especially when, we might talk about it later, but a lot of us here will probably own our own business at some point, whether you're freelancing, you may own an external business or something, but there's always something to do. And you always keep doing because of the fear of, if you have that critic, which I do, it's usually the fear of not being good enough if you don't keep pushing, and then tends to the cycle that can, if you don't catch it early, is that constant burnout, repeat, burnout, repeat. We're going to touch a bit more on burnout later, I think. But yeah, that would definitely be one for me personally, and that I've seen a lot with others. And I've seen people master that and have really long, successful careers. Like, you know, people like Scott are absolutely crushing it more than ever in middle age now. And I have also seen other people do the opposite, where they hit a wall and they just go too hard for too long and wash their hands of it. So yeah, that's my one personally. Yeah.
What would you say, Will, John?
I think I'd say the same. I think that as soon as you were describing the you've never done enough, like that's the message that I hear. And yeah, I think when you are a creative and there's just this, you perceive it to be a competition all the time, right? Which I think is an unhealthy underlying paradigm that we have about our creativity, that actually there's enough. Like, you can make stuff and it can be great, and we haven't run out of ideas for music or movies or photography. So it doesn't need to be so competitive, but because there is that kind of, I don't know, scarcity kind of mindset, I think that really drives this, you know, just feeling of like, yeah, got to keep grinding. And the big thing with that as well, what I find helpful is to kind of, you can have somebody else's set of metrics in your mind, what success looks like. But then I come back to, actually, I get to work for myself. I have a pretty flexible life. I get to make things that I love making. Like, there's so much in there that, according to my metrics, I'm smashing it. And I don't really care if I'm like a nobody in somebody else's measure of success, if I'm actually spending my time according to my values. So I find that helpful, just to go, actually, what's driving that slave master is a set of metrics and values for success that don't match my inner compass if I actually look at it more objectively.
Could I jump in there super quick too? And I totally agree. Like, I know a few people here are artists and stuff. Who here's had a song on Triple J? Yeah. So like 3 or 4 years
I know
ago,
a few.
3 or 4 years ago, before your first ever Triple J spin, if someone said to you, would you be stoked if you got a song on Triple J? You're like, yeah, now you've done it. Now the next time, those things wear off and the bar always changes. And that's a really scary trap to fall into, where enough's never enough. So that metrics point that Will says is a really important one to keep in mind and reflect back on the things you have achieved, because otherwise it will never end, whether it's getting in the hottest 100 or playing in front of this many people at a festival. So I think that's a really good point. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I'd definitely say it's perfectionist that's most difficult, has been the most difficult facet to deal with throughout my career, also my life. So what I was going to bring to this panel somewhat begrudgingly, was my own life experience and my own mental health issues. So, I was diagnosed 15 years ago or so with OCD. And the way OCD is a very nasty bedfellow when it comes to perfectionism, because rather than it being about like whether you've done enough, it's more about is what you're doing in the moment good enough. And if you let it kind of dominate you, it's never good enough, and it's harrowing, and I suppose I'll just kind of quickly note some of the things that we could potentially discuss without going into too much depth. But for me, the two main things that really helped me with perfectionism were try to fail and enjoy failing. Just fuck up. Just go and fuck up. And then B, laugh at it. Laugh at the OCD, laugh at the perfectionism. And you don't feel like laughing at it, but it's a powerful thing when you kind of take away its power, and just let it be human.
Yeah, I love that.
Because at the end of the day, you're only human. Humans make mistakes. We're not robots. We're not. Yeah, I like that. That's fantastic. One thing that resonated with me was the procrastinator, and I was a massive procrastinator. I live with autism and ADHD, so unstoppable object meets immovable force sort of thing, But a lot of the procrastination came from me thinking that what I wanted to do was unobtainable at times. Like, it's so far out of my reach, I wouldn't even know where to start. That's the first thing you got to do at times, is kind of like figure out what's the first step to doing what I want to do. And then once you get there, the thing I've struggled with is imposter syndrome, which I'm sure a lot of people know how that feels. Like, am I good enough to be here? Triple J has been amazing for me, but I've often felt like, do I belong here? Like, am I a part of this crowd? Like, do I fit in, that sort of thing? And it's a lot of that self-doubt that can creep in, even though obviously you've achieved quite a bit and you're really stoked with where you are, you can still have those questions in your head. So that's, I guess, how the inner critic creeps out of my psyche, I guess, in a way. So going back to you, John, you were talking a little bit about perfectionism. That's obviously a massive part of the inner critic psyche. I'm sure it's something that a lot of people, artists, producers alike, have struggled with. I'm sure everyone can relate to that in this room. I want to know, what are some things, from an artist's point of view, how do you manage your perfectionism?
Well, yeah, I mean, going back to what I was saying before, being willing to fail and trying, like, on purpose not to be perfect. As regardless of how, like, intrusive those thoughts are, just going, nah, I'm not going to try. Whether you're like doing it, like, recording a take in the studio, ironically, as like a lot of you guys know, that like the more you try to play well, the worse you play.
Yeah.
And then whereas if you just let go and be happy to, once again, sorry to use the bad language, but to fuck up, like you ironically end up playing better, and more of your essence comes out as well in your playing, and which is such a beautiful thing as well. I mean, this is a bit of that's another point altogether, but like when you, but actually I will talk about it a little bit because I think it's really important that when you step away from perfectionism, ironically you allow yourself to shine more as well, because you're not trying to be a machine. You're bringing your own sense of the groove, your own sense of the feel, like how you bend a note on the guitar, like how many like microtones, like that's you. So when you're not trying to think in that very compartmentalized perfectionistic way, it's extremely liberating. My kind of breaking point with the OCD was, I think it was 2012. And we were just talking about like aversion just, half an hour ago. And I was about to do like aversion as a guitarist and a vocalist for Chance Waters. And a few months before that, I'd kind of hit the point where like I just couldn't do gigs anymore because I was just it was torment. Like getting up there, like trying to play the notes and just being tormented by the OCD saying, you know, oh, you have to play every single nuance properly or perfectly. Like it just got too much, and I ended up freezing. I forgot my parts, and it just got worse and worse. And he was at his top at that time, and he was about to play Big Day Out. I'd always wanted to play Big Day Out as a millennial, you know, but I had to pull out because I just couldn't do it. And I just kind of I crashed out. I moved away from music for at least 6 months or so, but it was during that period that I learned you have to embrace failure. Like you have to embrace making mistakes and enjoy making mistakes. So I know it sounds like counterintuitive, but yeah, I think
so good. I so agree with that though. Like I've even noticed. I had an experience actually here at the Grove like a couple of months ago, and I'm not even sure if like Owen probably won't even remember this, but it was like the second song we'd recorded together, and I was in the vocal booth, and it had been a great day. Like all of the session musicians had been like epic, like my vocal was going really, really well, and then it was just like the last chorus we had to sort out, and there was just like a slight change in the melody. I think it like lifted a little bit, and for the life of me, I just like couldn't sing it. Like it just kept like getting the note wrong. I don't know what was going on. And my inner critic just like, it just popped up with a vengeance, and I hadn't really experienced it in a while before that. And it was like, what are you doing here? You're a psychologist. Like, why are you trying to record music? Like, you're not a pro. Look, you're in this expensive studio with all these like professionals. Like, what are you even doing here? And it just like, it got nuts loud to the point where I actually had to like go take a break. And then, but when I came back, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to be completely silly about it. Yeah. And I was like, doesn't matter how bad this sounds. I'm just going to keep like singing it out until I finally, and it just finally started to gel and I like let it go. But even as like a trained professional, right? Like this stuff, it happens. And I think your idea on that is so bang on.
I was going to say a good point too with that. And speaking of OCD, like it's definitely something I've suffered with, and I've had conversations with people in this room about it without being specific. But that point was important too. Even someone who's a trained psychologist that knows this thing, it still arises. It's not about eradicating things like imposter syndrome or any of these negative self-talk. It's just sometimes naturally ingrained in us. But the difference was how quickly she recognised it, and she had systems in place she knew she could come to come back to centre quicker. And maybe that's something we can lean into and chat a bit more about, or you can ask us later in private. But if you hear the voice, that's not bad. The recognition's good. But that was a great example. She can't stop it, even it's so ingrained, but she had the skills and tools to go, oh, recognise that, this is what's going to help me come back. And she was able to do that quicker, while some of us, maybe, especially some people in this room, are younger, they haven't developed the skills yet, and that's where the spiralling may start. So I think that was a really good example to hear something like that. Yeah.
And Jack, you've probably seen from both sides of the coin artists who are struggling in the studio with perfectionism, whether it comes to performances, recording, or even writing. And you've probably seen engineers and producers who are struggling with that sort of thing as well. From your experiences, what do you think is the best thing to do to deal with that?
Yeah, I've seen people in tears in this vocal booth many a time. And often the bigger artists I've seen in tears needing to get out of the room. I've seen it many times. So it's got no correlation to your success level. I learnt about imposter syndrome from a producer here. I was assisting a great producer on a big record. He'd won many gold records. It wasn't Scott, by the way. This makes it sound like it's Scott. It wasn't Scott. And he sat there and he goes, I nearly swore, but it doesn't matter. He's like, fuck, I've really been feeling imposter syndrome about this record because the band was really popping. I'm like, what's that? And he's like, you know that feeling like you're going to get caught out and everyone knows you're a fake? And I'm like, oh yeah, I get that all the time. I didn't know that was a thing. And it unlocked this whole world of realization that everyone is dealing with it. And this was coming from a dude that made all the records I loved. Like, for him to have it, I was like, oh, okay, everyone's going to have it. How I could recommend, I think the number one point is the recognition of the voice. That is absolute starting point. Then the techniques from there, that's probably a better floor for maybe Erin to go back to, but it works for everyone else. Some people it's breath work, some people it's going for a walk, some people it's calling your mum, some people it's grabbing the guitar, some people it's just get the phone away, jump in the shower. The tools are very different, but the recognition is the universal point for everyone in this room, I personally think.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Erin, what sort of small techniques, even if it is like what Jack just said, what would you like suggest to get into with that?
Yeah, so there's the small techniques, and then there's like the process, and I think we need like a bit of both. So the small techniques are like exactly like what you were saying, you know, whether it's journaling, whether it's mindfulness, whether it's breath work, and just getting really good at calming your nervous system through breath. That can actually be really powerful. Whether it's like connecting in with your like support group, these are all kind of like little tips and tricks that you can use in the moment. But I'd say what's more important than that is having like a process in place to actually change your relationship with this inner dialogue. So instead of experiencing it as like judgment and criticism, you can actually start to experience it as help, compassion, improvement. And so again, this is a little bit complicated, so I won't be able to like fully flesh it out here without taking up all of the time. But I essentially guide people through 3 steps or 3 phases to deal with their inner critic. The first is reveal, which so that's exactly what you were talking about. Learning to recognize it, learning to recognize when the voice is at play. What flavor does it show up for you? Is it the perfectionist? Is it the procrastinator? Learning about when it's likely to show up. So what sorts of things are you doing? Are you in a recording booth? Are you going into a social situation? Are you doing some public speaking that day? Are you studying for an exam? Like, when does it start to get really noisy for you? And also understanding, like, something that can be really beneficial is understanding when did it first show up for you? Because the likelihood is this isn't something that's just come up in the last couple of days. It's probably been around for a long time. Yeah. And there may even be an event or a few events where you can start to notice, hey, this thing got really loud after that breakup, or when I lost that job, or when I failed that exam, or I was bullied at school, whatever that thing was. Usually there's like a genesis story almost for the inner critic. And so that kind of getting really familiar with it is really important.
I never thought about that. It's like when the seed was planted.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like it's sort of like when did the super villain like kind of emerge in the movie, right?
The alter ego.
The alter ego. When did it first come out? So that's like phase 1, and then just briefly with the next few phases. The second phase is called release. And so this is recognizing that the inner critic often brings with it a whole bunch of emotions that are really toxic for us. So things like shame, things like guilt, regret, doubt. These sorts of emotions tend to be kind of like the hallmark features of the inner critic. And so having ways to kind of move through these emotions is really, really important. Music's actually great for it. But yeah, we can sort of go into it a little bit more later. I won't dominate the time. And then the final part of the story is what I call reclaim. And this is all about reclaiming your identity, reclaiming your story, reclaiming your like emotional well-being. Yeah. And like connecting back in with that kind of core authentic part of yourself, which becomes a lot easier when you've gotten rid of some of that emotional baggage that the inner critic's bringing with it. Once you're able to kind of like reconnect in with your like authentic self, then your creativity reemerges, then your spontaneity reemerges, your fulfillment, all these things. So that's broad strokes: reveal, release, reclaim.
Can I just quickly dovetail off that?
100%.
Because I'm sure Erin will be able to explain this a whole lot better. But one of the best kind of modalities or images that I was ever handed, I can't remember if I learnt this from a therapist or whether I read it, but it's called the IFS, the Internal Family Systems modality. Yeah. And it's the idea that we're made up of different parts of our psyche. We're not just this one kind of homogenous self, right? That we have different parts that emerge in different parts of our life. And one of my therapists explained it really well. She said, it's like you're on a bus. And there's all these different people that are on the bus, but then you've got a driver. And the driver should be, as you know, Richard Schwartz, the guy who came up with the modality, said, like your higher self, the observer that can observe the voice that's talking to you, that can observe the feeling that you're feeling in your chest when it's starting to tighten up or whatever. And the observer, or as Janina Fisher, another traumatologist, says, is the adult self. That's the language that she uses for it. And the way I learnt to kind of integrate this modality was via trying to parent the voices, like these shitty voices that started, harassing me in whether I was in, doubting myself, or whether I was dealing with issues during a performance or while I was recording or whatever. And like Erin was saying, kindly and graciously speaking, this is going to sound a bit crazy, but it isn't, but like speaking to that part internally and, mothering or fathering it as a good parent would, and taking it by the hand and say, well, why are you feeling this way? Why do you feel like you're going to fuck up? Why do you think that you're never doing enough? And then just like, a good parent would do with their child, allowing it to speak and then walking it through that, and just even that alone, the process of that can be really, really helpful, and so letting it process not just like the cognitive aspect of it, but also the somatic, the bodily aspect of it. So the tension in your body, the fact that you've got fog in your brain, like it really helps processing that. So that's what I've learned.
That is rich soil for some songwriting. Just write a song or a poem about your inner voices and the dialogue between them. And
Well, actually, Will, I want to go with you now, because we've talked about this in a musical sense, creatively, and also doing production and stuff like that. But coming from your area of expertise of writing poetry and authorship and stuff like that, how does perfectionism manifest itself for you, and how do you deal with it?
The big thing that freestyle taught me, which I think actually set me up in a helpful way, was that you have to move quicker than your inner critic if you're going to freestyle, because you have to put thoughts together quicker than you can judge them. And so inevitably half the stuff you say is totally whack. And then half of the stuff you say sounds good, maybe has a good rhyme. And if it's even better, it has a good rhyme and it makes sense. Because to begin with, you just put rhymes together that don't make sense. Anyway, I look back at the version of me that's like 17-year-old, walking my dog and freestyling, at school, freestyling with somebody else who could kind of do a crappy beatbox. And I'm really grateful, because it just taught me to move quicker than that inner critic. Yeah, and I'm a big believer in, if anyone's familiar with Julia Cameron, The Artist's Way, she talks about the morning pages. Start your day with just 3 pages of stream of consciousness writing. It's not the work, it's not the novel, it's not the song. It's just a process of allowing yourself to express some of the weird stuff going on in your subconscious. And then you move on from it. But it helps you to kind of get unlocked. And so that's the big thing for me, is just whether it's with a journal or whatever it is, having some form of allowing yourself to express yourself without it always being the pressure of this has to be a song or this has to be a poem, but actually just allowing yourself to express your thoughts and be curious is kind of laying good soil for you then to have those moments where you show up to the page and something good comes. But it's that, hopefully we all know that the golden rule of making anything good is you just got to make a lot of shit. And so for me, that's kind of what I come back to is, just like try not to fool myself into thinking that I can, I think we edit in the wrong order. Like we edit before we've made something.
Yeah, that's so
you
good.
have to make something before you can edit it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to dig through a lot of dirt before you strike gold, sort of
100%.
bombs right there.
Yeah.
I love that. That's a really cool way.
On the journaling too, does anyone here ever journal? Or semi-regularly journal? The brain fog thing that John was talking about as well, and what Will was talking about, that's I reckon one of the best ones, and we teach this unit here where we talk a bit about this stuff, and some of the students what do you journal about? And I'm like, just talk to yourself. Like sometimes I'll be third person. What's going on, bud? Like I will literally start my page with, what's going on? Why are you feeling? And other times I'll just say other times I'm not talking about me at all, but as a practical thing, I know everyone's is different, but if you've never tried it, journaling for me was my biggest one for sure. So if you've never tried it, just buy a $2 book from Officeworks and first thing in the morning, just wake up and I'm feeling a bit nervous about going to that thing tonight.
I wish I was still asleep.
I would add to it. So put on a timer for 3 minutes. 3 minutes is a really manageable time. 3 pages sounds like pretty terrifying for most people. Yeah. But if you put on a timer for 3 minutes and you just set yourself the rule, I have to write for 3 minutes, the pen can't stop moving or my fingers can't stop tapping at the keys. And if I get stuck, I write, I'm stuck, I don't know what to write, I feel like I'm in the abyss. The abyss is a scary place. Holy shit, this is inside me. What's going on inside me? You just let it come out. And you have to just give yourself a constraint. There's an ending. It's only 3 minutes or it's 3 pages or whatever it is. But until you hit that end, you just let it out. I have a low level of fame. I go into schools and teach kids to write poetry. And the most famous thing, if you go and ask a high school kid, if they know Will Small, if I've been to their school, I will have taught them to take a daily dump. And I tell them the greatest piece of wisdom I have to offer as a human being and as a creative is that it's a good and healthy thing to take a dump every day. And, if you're time poor and, life's stressful, you can multitask your dumps. You can be doing one kind of dump, you get your phone out, do the other kind, and, just so many benefits, right?
I think that's a really important point about setting a time limit too, because if there is anyone out here that has or does struggle with complex trauma or trauma in general, as Erin would know, you don't want to be overtaken by the trauma. So when you're talking about the abyss and going, oh, holy shit, I'm in the abyss. Oh, fuck, I need to get out. It's great that you do have that time limit so you don't get too triggered and then you're stuck in the abyss for however long. So I thought that was super important.
Yeah, knowing when to reach out. I mean, I think that's a big part of it as well. Knowing what are your signs that you actually need a bit of help, and it's it's not enough to just be by yourself with it. When is it time to go and chat to your best mate, or get on the phone and call a family member, or get an appointment with a doctor or a mental health professional. Just kind of having a sense of, hey, this abyss, it's been at me, now for several days in a row, several weeks in a row. And if it's kind of been stringing out and really kind of dominating your headspace in your life for a few weeks, it's probably a sign that you may need a little bit of extra help. And never be afraid to do that. Never be afraid to reach out.
Yeah, I don't know, I won't speak for everyone, but I'm sure the majority of us have seeked external help before. I definitely have, and would advocate it. Just like going to the gym for your body, go see a therapist for your mind, or a counsellor, or a good friend that's just really good to chat to about stuff. Yeah.
I love that. That's great sound advice right there, and really, really interesting to hear all that. And it's really comforting to know how similar the experiences can be. Everyone's struggled with these sort of things. Everyone needs to know where you can go if you are struggling with these sort of things, which is fantastic as well. Now, I want to pivot to a slightly different topic. We mentioned this a little bit earlier. A lot of people in the industry will have the opportunity to work with themselves, whether it be in a management sort of position where you're working with yourself, or freelance work, or even being a studio owner. Jack, you've put this down as a really interesting topic. What are the biggest challenges of working with yourself?
As a creative, so there's obviously a bunch of artists in this room, and bands and DJs and producers as well. Most of us in the creative fields will work for ourselves in some capacity. And there's a whole range. And even if you don't end up in a creative field, there's still in this day and age a lot of opportunities you will work for yourself, or maybe work very insularly, whatever the word is, in a big organisation. But massive amounts, I personally have come across from working for yourself. There are a lot of challenges that come from that. And when you tie that with the creative field, it's really hard. A personal one for me, I've always tried to work on is things like balancing your art while you run a business. That's the hardest thing I've personally faced. I've had good mentors, like learning from people like Scott and stuff here and watch that, which is massive help for me. So for you people here in bands or wanting to be or are producers or live sound engineers or artist managers, that's the biggest one I personally find is running your business while not getting burnt out and still keeping creative. That's quite a juggling act, I've found. And it actually just takes a bit of experimenting and a bit of grace with yourself. I have periods of time where I might be feeling financially stressed, I'm going to push hard. Then I might notice the work suffering a bit, and then I back off and give more time to the work. And then I overcommit and spend too much time on something. It's actually quite a bit of a juggle. So I wouldn't actually say that I have the answer to what that is, but I would say give yourself grace that it can be challenging at times to balance that and just experiment with it. And again, it's all just back to awareness. So if you're an artist right now, you're in a band, maybe you're feeling the pinch financially and struggling a little bit, don't be afraid to prioritize that for a little bit. And then actually, hey, I've got a bit, I've saved back up. I want to put this back into the band or back into something with my artistry. But that's the biggest one I've personally found. And the other one, which events like this are really good for, is when you work for yourself, it can get flippin' lonely. Like, I know I am collaborating with artists all the time, so I get that contact, but I don't have a manager anymore. So who do I talk to when I have a dispute about something with an artist? Who do I talk to when I want to make that financial decision to invest in something? Who do I talk to if I'm not getting the type of clients I want? So that working alone, it can be very lonely working for yourself in a creative field. And the foundations of what's being built here with these types of gets-togethers and stuff is also really important. So like John and I met recently and we've had a couple of good chats at the studio. So finding other people doing what you're doing is really helpful. And having those mentors. A lot of you in bands, which is good so you can talk to other bands, but for those of you that might really work for yourself or are singer-songwriters and solo artists, collaborate and talk with other people doing the same thing or are doing what you want to be doing. I hope that helps.
That's what mixing and mastering is all about, meeting people who have similar experiences in the same industry. Will, John, what sort of experiences have you guys had with managing yourselves and creativity? Have you found the balance?
Do you want to go first?
Oh, I mean, it's a constant, it's one of those things like you're saying before, Jack, where it's not something that you ever resolve. It's kind of an ongoing tension to manage rather than a problem that you will solve. I think I've been running my business for 7 years, and at the 5-year mark, I really wanted to quit. And I had a good few months where I just like fantasized about like working for council in the cruisiest but most highly paid job.
Well, that can help you work so treatment if you want to in there.
And I went through a pretty bad patch, and but then things kind of opened up again, and it was just like a timing thing. And the last couple of years have been amazing, and actually that happened just before some significant things opened up, and I now, have other staff that work for me, and that's a whole other stress because you're kind of thinking about how do I keep enough of this going. But, I think it does come back to kind of what I said earlier about if you set your metrics. And for me, the important things in my life are about, partly they're about the kind of dad that I want to be and the kind of life I want in a very intimate way that nobody gets to see. So that's important. That has to be prioritized. But the other thing is I want to live a creative life. The only reason that I own a business, like I don't care about business. I just want to do the stuff I want to do. Yeah. And so that's why. And so if I get to the point where the hustle or the accounting or whatever it is overtaking just, am I making stuff that I want to make? Then I could do that for little periods where you have to ride it out, because you do. A lot of it is just about waiting for the waves. Like you just have to ride the waves. Yeah. But at the end of the day, for me, it comes down to I want to have a sense of integrity that I'm making the kind of things that I want to make in the world. And if somebody else would pay me to do that in like a typical job, amazing. The council one's probably not for me. But at this point in time, I needed to make the job. And if the job is working for me rather than the other way around, then there should be enough of that, filling the tank type thing.
How do you find that satisfaction where you know that you're going the right direction with that sort of thing?
I think you do have to pause because like I have worked, and now a lot of the projects I work on have a lot of other creatives involved. We do a mix of video and photography and design and music production. We've got a little track that John and I released today, which we're going to play soon. But to actually pause after one of those moments where you made something and to look at it and go, man, like, I'm really proud of this. Mm-hmm. And I look back and I can, like, I recently crossed my little 7-year milestone of doing my thing, and just I paused and I just wrote down a bunch of the highlight moments that you kind of miss unless you take the time to pause and go, like we said before, if that Triple J thing was a milestone, like, what are the milestones that you 10 years ago would look at you now and go, wow, like, that's amazing, but it just felt normal. So I mean, a practice of gratitude is a big thing for me, and I start almost every day asking my kids, like, what's 3 things you're grateful for today, and we just go around and do that. And I think that's one of the most healthy things I do for just keeping that sense of, like, man, I'm so grateful I get to do this stuff. So yeah.
How about you, John? Yeah.
A few thoughts. Yeah, so I remember, like, the last major paper that I did for my my undergraduate degree was, the question was, how do you survive in the Australian music industry? So I got to, an easy one, right? So I got to, but it was cool because I got to go and do my field work, right? I went and, like, interviewed a bunch of people that had been pros for a long time in the industry, and asked them, well, how did you do it? How are you still doing what you're doing? And the thing that I found from all of them was just diversifying, being versatile, constantly learning. So I think for me, that's been a big thing. Like, so I started off as a session actually before that I was in bands, and then I moved into session playing as a guitarist, and I was always, like, playing bass and drums as well, which was helpful when we were in a studio context. Then that naturally evolved into music production. And then I was doing sessions with, great producers, but I was just a session player, but I was, developing friendships with them, and learning what I could from them, and which was infinitely better than what I'd learned at uni. And I was just going, all right, I just have to continue learning. And then, and that just meant that I could get more work and move in being curious and moving in different directions, that kind of made me light up, I guess. And so,
Sorry, that was a festival we had recently.
Oh, okay.
You were so quick on that, man.
Yeah, it was very quick. Yeah.
Literally. Sorry.
The other thing I was going to say is a real pet peeve of mine is when you got, like, influencer bros that are on Instagram or TikTok that say, oh, if you're not 100% sold out on the cause, you're willing to die for it, sell everything, give up any relationship that you have, then just don't do it, don't bother, bro. And it's like that's just not, it's not practical at all. Like, and you end up destroying the things in your life that actually matter the most. Friendships, family, your health. If you're trying to, like, worship the beast of capitalism and success, screw that. That doesn't matter at the end of the day. It's love, your family, and your friends. So I guess what I'm trying to say with that is that so what I do right now, so I don't have to do production work every day, is I work as an NDIS support worker with a client, and it's kind of music therapy-ish, but it's helping him. He's got cerebral palsy, and it's helping him. He loves hip hop, and and he has major mental health issues, that accompany being bound to a wheelchair, and he's got a really fucking hard life. So being able to be there and help him process his emotions through music, record him, just help him write and create the beats that he wants to create is so fulfilling and so great. But it also means that I don't have to work with certain artists that I don't necessarily mesh with, or get stuck in this kind of this very like Puritan way of thinking that, oh no, it has to be all artists. It has to be trying to like, get another #1 album or get a, win an ARIA or whatever. It's like, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. Like it's yeah.
Yeah, and just to kind of dovetail with that as well, like I've noticed, like obviously as creative people, there can sometimes be like a level of anxiety around like putting out your work as well. I've noticed that can come up for people a lot. And like what I always suggest when there is some anxiety coming up around that, something that I've found has worked like for myself is like kind of like reverse engineering the fear. So like if the fear is around like not being kind of understood or not being recognized or not being kind of like popular or accepted or kind of whatever that version is for you that creates a bit of anxiety when you're doing your creative work and you're putting it out, I was just like to ask myself and like ask my clients as well, like, are you giving yourself that recognition? Are you giving yourself that like full acceptance? Are you listening to yourself? Are you understanding yourself? Because I find like when you've got that really strong like core foundation and that really sort of strong relationship to yourself, like I know that's a bit abstract, but when you've got that like kind of strong foundation, then it's interesting. Those other fears, they really start to sort of dissipate and the volume really starts to go down. So that's like something else that I've found can just be really beneficial in just navigating, surviving, being an artist.
Yeah.
Is it Q&A now? Yeah. Yeah, and that's great. And I love that we've ended on such a positive note there by finding the things that really do matter. Like, of course, your career matters, the stuff that you work on matters, the people you work with matters, the things you create matter, but the things that really should matter the most are the things that you are most grateful for. And I love that we've talked about that there. I'd like to open it up to everyone in the room. Do you guys have any questions related to mental health strategies for our panel?
May I say something? I just want to say thank you to you. I have been...
think your inner critic plays in your artistic judgment, and how do you decipher, I guess, the noise or the nonsense of your inner critic from your artistic and creative choices?
That's a good question. I just asked Claude if it's any good or not, and then Claude just tells me what I want to hear. No, it's a really good question, because I think there is a big difference between, like having that relationship with the inner critic and then just recognizing that you got to shine the diamond and you got to edit, and the first version of it that you might be happy with isn't where it could be. I think that whole line between people that just want to quickly make something and then chuck it out straight away, and then people that just sit on it for ages and never want to put it out because it's never ready. I'm more on the just chuck it out there, and I have at times lived to regret that. But I think that's partly a self-awareness thing. Like, all of this is going, what does it look like for me to edit and to, develop my taste and to, improve how I kind of see my vision through. And maybe some of us, it's about that self-awareness and reflecting, am I too much on the just trigger happy, chuck everything out there as slop? And I think now in the AI times, like, we just are seeing like just so much slop, right? And I think that's the big challenge for our like for the next wave is, if you want to be creative, you can't be average, you can't get away with average anymore. And I do think, the best way that I guess you can use AI is to actually like make the thing good and then ask, how could I improve this? Or what would the Shark Tank person say about this? And then kind of use that to kind of refine and reiterate.
You go.
No, go ahead. Please go ahead.
Okay. I'll quickly just add to that. I think one of the most helpful things I've ever learnt in terms of like the creative process and the editing process is, I think it's a Walt Disney quote. I'm just going to paraphrase it, but he essentially says, don't ever mix the editor with the creator. Like, allow the creator to be the creator and then bring the editor later on.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. A lot of you in this room that I personally know are artists, and
I actually think initially when you're creating, like with the inner critic thing, don't second guess a thing and go blah, get it all out. And then whether you refine it yourself, but that's when you bring in a producer or a mixer or something. I've personally found the artists I've worked with have been most successful, or watched the people here. A lot of them are the free spirits that are like this. And then it's someone like Scott comes in, or myself, or John, or Will, or whatever. They're the ones that go, okay, stop, that thing, let's pull that. So if for the artists in this room, I actually think the initial mind dump is the gold. And then whether you are also the editor and then you need to change mindsets, that's a different story. But then I think it's more pulling in a collaborator to help you refine that initial thing. But if you, I actually think that first is where the gold, that's the gold, for sure.
Yeah, something else that was coming to mind for me was also just kind of recognizing what place you're creating from. Are you creating from a place of fear or a place of self-acceptance? Or are you creating from like really any of those emotions associated with the inner critic? Is it like a shame? Is it a I'm trying to hide myself? Is it I'm feeling guilty about something? Is it a regret thing? And even though those experiences can be fuel for stories and lyric and music, I think if you're in a space of fear and shame and regret, it's very difficult to be like authentically creative. And so I feel like that might be a first signal that you've kind of tipped into the inner critic creator mode versus the creative creator mode.
That's so good. That's really good.
Good question, Alan.
That was
I
a
didn't
singer.
speak. I was sitting there for about a good few minutes.
Yeah, it took me a while.
Yeah.
I was like,
I'm glad I didn't have to answer it. Any more questions from the room?
Sum it up is just like giving advice to everyone here is just like a balance of your personal life, artist life, and making sure you're still doing stuff to look after yourself outside of it to avoid burnout.
Yeah.
Just some simple tips. Or like what things you do to avoid. Like,
what do we do?
About like going for like a walk or a swim or like
I think I reckon my fault for a while, which I'm leaning into more now, is to definitely not discard the importance of connections and relationships within the industry and externally to that. I think the working for yourself, I've probably fallen into that, just drive hard, do your thing solo kind of thing. And in more recent times, that just can push you into a bit more isolation. I think, the importance of connections is the personal one for me, I reckon, that has helped the most. Getting yourself in shape and breath work or all that, so that's all, everyone likes their own little pockets of it. But in the end, I actually think connection, good quality connections, not number of connections, quality of a handful of connections is really important. And then if you can be a part of a bigger community like this where you have nice connections on a level in a broad community is also really helpful. So things like this I think are super important personally. I
actually have an answer for this. One thing that I've learnt to do is identify like as early as possible how much is too much for you to handle, even if it's like weeks in advance and you're like, okay, I got these things I'm already doing. How much more can I take on board before I know it's just going to get a bit too much? And I've had moments where I've, the classic eat with your eyes, not your stomach sort of scenario where you think it's going to be all right, but theory and practice are two different things. And you get to it and then you leave yourself feeling a little bit exhausted, like you don't want to do anything for a couple of days. And it's definitely a good idea to find that balance of, okay, I can do these comfortably, but what else can I do as well? And once you got that, in between, identify what you want to do that will fill in that downtime, whether it be just like chilling, doing nothing, watching TV, listening to music, going for a walk, going for a drive. Those are the sorts of things I do. I'm very happy with myself doing those sorts of things, or like, someone in your circle as well. And then you'll be fresh and energized and ready to go. And that's definitely the best way I recharge my batteries and avoid burnout.
Love it.
I think that's great. Like, I think having structure, which is so difficult as a creative, or stereotypically, like placing a structure or routine that you try to follow throughout the week. So one thing that matters so much to me is on Mondays, I have daddy daycare day where I take care of my little 2-year-old boy, and it's just me and him, you know, and mum gets to do what she wants, and it's just so good because not only does it force me to stop, but it helps me to see the world through a toddler's eyes.
Yeah.
And well, that too, 100% that too as well. You know. But I mean, they're pretty good at getting emotions out, aren't they? Yeah. But then when they're not, the other thing is like, you know, how they just stop and go, Dad, and like point at like a bird or something, and it's like, oh yeah, that's a pretty sweet bird.
Somehow it's beautiful every time.
Exactly right. So having that as the beginning of my week is kind of like, I don't know, a bit of a Sabbath, you know.
I love that.
Yeah.
And just like playfulness in general. Like,
Exactly.
I feel like it's sometimes we can get really serious about our work, and obviously it is something we should take seriously, but without having that, kind of like childlike playfulness, just being able to have like, you know, go out and do some cartwheels and just do stuff that feels a bit strange every now and then, you know, like
ruin your back.
Cartwheel demonstration.
Maybe we won't demonstrate, but like I think playfulness is so key to just like maintaining creativity and not ending up in that burnout kind of track.
Well, I think that'll just about do. Oh yeah, sorry, one more.
Yeah, sorry, my question, I don't know if my question's like a bit goofy. How you going? My name's Brody.
Hi Brody.
Yeah, so I was doing hip hop music myself for a few years there, and then at the end of last year I started doing live events. I started putting other independent artists on on live events and stuff, just because they didn't have the access or the resources to host their own live events. I got into a lot of beef with rappers, and the hip hop community, it's a very like street lifestyle. I'm a very nice person with a very smiley face, and they just didn't like that either. Like, bro, you got homesick tatted on your neck, you're like half goth, you're a poser, bro, like get out of here. People like put diss songs on me, and then like that actually like, you know, hurt some of my personal relations with my friends and stuff like that. So when it comes to bad media coverage that people do against you, do you have any suggestions on like how to push through that? Because it made me feel really burnt out personally. I felt like I put so much energy in for other people, where someone turned around and said some shit about me. No one was there to defend me about the situation. So just found that, like, took it to heart, found it very interesting. And that's me just like asking around questions.
Yeah.
Is it kind of goofy? It is kind of goofy, but
no, that's a great question.
That's a great question. My sound guy here, like, we had a bit of a rough spot there. I had a rough spot with a lot of people. And I found that a bit of a difficult thing when it comes to personal relationships and burning bridges and stuff like that.
100%. Well, like the first thing coming to mind for me is just like spending a bit of time reflecting on when has that external voice become an internal voice? Like, is there an aspect of the opinion from that like media piece or from that person? Have you internalized any of that? And then are you kind of like replaying that judgment onto yourself? So that would be like one question I would like maybe just think about a little bit. Yeah. And if it is the case that you've internalized some of that opinion or judgment, then I think it's kind of going back to some of the things that we've been speaking about tonight. And like first and foremost, I would say that like relationship with self stuff again is coming to the fore for me. Just making sure that, you know, the voice that you're amplifying for yourself is one of like acceptance and compassion and understanding. And if you're being misunderstood by someone else, just make sure you're understanding yourself first. That would be
cool. I get that. Yeah, because I just like the whole like situation just like burnt me out, where I just disengaged from the whole creative experience. It's just like
100%.
This is me trying to get back into it type thing.
Yeah.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, there you go. Oh yeah.
I just wanted to kind of add on as well, like in terms of reaching out. I know like it can be quite sort of hard as well, because if you don't know me, I actually work in New South Wales Health as a psychiatrist, and it's a lot of the time when people come to seek help, it's already like a bit too late. And in terms of artists as well, I notice like creative minds usually are more vulnerable to a lot of that, you know, mental health sort of vulnerabilities as well. You get through all this, you know, inner talk and inner sort of lots of that thing that you feel like when you reach out, you have that expectation that, you know, all the profession will just fix you. And a lot of the time it's me trying to tell them it's not like a hardware machine where you just come into a psychiatric ward and just get fixed and you go out very happy. Pills is not, you know, the answer to a lot of things, and a lot of things take like multi sort of factorial stuff as well, like therapy and, you know, like work experience, life experience, and also your own kind of like cathartic release with releasing music. So that works for me. So that's why I'm also doing that like you do.
Amazing.
And yeah, so I did bring like some resources as well. So in the brochures, I just finished work, so I just brought them here. In terms of expectations, I think reaching out is a way of you trying to get help. And other people needs time to kind of process what you're bringing to the table as well. So do have compassion for like both parties as well. And there has been a lot of increased demands as well with COVID being over and everyone coming out of the woodwork. And there has been increased wait lists, especially in private as well. And there's not much of psychiatrists. I think there's only about 2,700 psychiatrists for the whole whole Australia, and
it's crazy,
And so it's pretty demanding. So, but yeah, just reach out and then follow up. And I think that's the other thing is talk about your expectations of the service and see what else they can offer.
That's really helpful, yeah. And you got resources here?
Like... Yeah, I've brought like the mental help line that will refer to acute services where there's also psychologists, psychiatrists. You probably know about acute care service, so...
Sure. Yeah. No, that's great. That's helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Well, I think that just about wraps things up. Well, thank you so much for giving up for our wonderful panel, firstly, ladies and gentlemen. And give it up to yourselves. Thanks so much for you all being here. It's been quite an incredible discussion. And I think we've all learnt and feel a bit more relieved maybe about a few things. I guess we'll just mix and master now and have a chat and hang out and bada bing, bada boom. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, mate.